whenever people would ask me how I reverted to Islam, I would always give you some sort of half-truth. And honestly, I don't know why exactly I did this, but I just kind of wanted to clear the air because looking back at my whole 9-month journey into being a Muslim and my journey of looking into religion itself for over a year, I kind of realized, well, it's quite interesting, you know, and why not tell people about it? Because maybe there's somebody on the fence and they just want to hear somebody else's story, how somebody else looked through all the other religions and it's just like, wow, this made sense. So yeah, hope you enjoy the video. I grew up atheist. My parents pretty much divorced young. They would take me to church a few years when I was young. I never really understood anything, I'm not gonna lie. I didn't really pay attention, but honestly, I mean, I kind of just had some sort of atheistic perspective the entire time. I didn't believe in God. I would actually kind of laugh at people who did, and I kind of feel bad for that now. I had a very ignorant perspective, and I never knowingly met any Muslims like where I live. I live in Texas, in a decently small town, and where I live, people are either Christian.
So, is this because this is 1 month ago? So, 1 year back. So, is okay. I know Texas is a big, because Texas in itself as a whole, right? Because in some video and some, there's like the Muslim center or something in Texas, I believe. It seems that, oh, there's kind of huge community there, and in some videos, some people say that it's almost non-existent. So is it because we are talking about different geographical location within Texas, different cities, for example? For I have never, okay, I have, in terms of the US, I have, because I'm totally seeing it from an outside, even though I was once there, but when I was there, it's like a very young age, where I do not have or save any memory there, right? My wife was born in Oklahoma, which is, I think, the neighboring state to Texas, right? I was there at the age, I think, 2 or 3, and then after my father have finished his PhD, no, his master, right? He did his master there in Oklahoma. We come back, so I cannot have, I do not have any memory back then. But going back to Texas, so that's is it because these different people have different location within Texas, that some say this some huge community, some say that there's no Muslim there?
Or atheist, right? So meeting a Muslim, I never really met any. There was like 2 kids in my school, which I later found out during my first Ramadan that they were Muslim. I was pretty confused, right? To add some extra context, my best friend of 5 years was getting into religion a little bit over a year ago, right? And at this point, he was growing his haram business. But one day, I don't remember what we're talking about. Like, I think it was like Andrew Tate or something. We're talking about Andrew Tate, and then we somehow got to religion, and we were talking about Jesus, peace be upon.
Okay, so the background, because I was wondering where did I heard some background thing, is from this video. Anyway, so Andrew Tate is interesting. I'm not talking about Andrew Tate himself, but I'm saying that his whole episode kind of play a significant role, because previously I watched Sony Fast, right? His early trigger point is reacting to Andrew Tate, for example, and this guy also say it's not really about Andrew Tate that is actively sharing Islam, but him being a figure and involved in certain things become a trigger point of discussion, I would say, about him, about Islam, etc. So that is interesting to see how one event, one figure, one issue can lead towards something. Just like the phenomenon back then during 9/11 and afterwards, you know, people get some people getting interested to know what is this Islam is all about, and some people end up becoming Muslim. Similarly with recent episode with Palestine or Gaza, where them being bombed, etc., and the video come up from inside there of the resilience, the patience, the belief, etc., and some people become interested and become Muslim. So it is interesting. It is interesting how one event, one issue, one figure, one thing can lead to another thing, even though it is not intended to be so, perhaps.
Upon Mickey Isa, and I was saying some pretty crazy stuff. So we were just talking about it for whatever reason. And I was being the natural skeptic I am, right? I was playing kind of like the devil's advocate, where it's like, how do we even know he existed? And oh my, it's very stupid that now that I'm looking back on it, it's like, how could you even believe this, right? And right after my friends kind of told me off, it's like, dude, you don't know anything. I was like, sure, bro, you're kind of right. And I don't remember what happened exactly next, but I do remember watching some videos on religion, Christianity and Islam. I was actually looking into Christianity first because, well, everybody around me was Christian, right? So at this point, I was believing in God, but I didn't really know exactly what religion to follow. In my head, it made sense to follow religion, one that was right, perfect, and hasn't been changed. So what I did is I bought the Bible and the Quran at the same time. I didn't know anything about religion, right? So I was gonna buy the Torah, like literally the Torah. I didn't know the Hebrew Bible was the same as the Old Testament. I bought me the ESV Bible, and I also bought me a Quran. But whenever I got the Quran, it was actually in Arabic. It said English translation, but it was still in Arabic, right? At the bottom, I believe they gave you like small translations, but like the actual text was in Arabic. So I had to return that and get a new one. And once I got this new Quran, and the first thing I remember is it spelled horrible, but I was like, you know what, I should still read this. You can kind of tell at this point, I didn't know anything. So definitely reading about this with the actual sources was the best option for me. Around a year ago at this time, I want to say maybe September, I had this master plan. Okay, I'm going to read the Bible front to back. I don't want to skip any pages. I don't want to read too much. And my Bible was around 1,000 pages long, and I've never read a book on my own before that. So I was thinking, okay, well, how do I do this, and how do I not get burnt out? Until 2024 started, I basically divided the number of pages by the number of days, and then I got around 20 to 30 pages each day. And whenever I miss a day, I recalculated so I could, do it. And I finished the Bible at the end of the year. It took me a few months, but I did it. It was pretty eye-opening. I'm not gonna lie. Like, I never looked into any sort of religion before. I didn't know the story of Moses, Abraham, Jesus, at least in their account, right? So learning about it was really, really interesting. And like on the side, I would watch either Dawa, maybe some sort of debate, or like a priest talking about Christianity. So that's what I did. At this point, I wouldn't even say like a third way into the Bible. I was like, okay, well, Christianity is kind of cooked. I mean, I would watch people like Sheikh Uthman. He would bring up some very good points, like, how could you believe in a book that has contradictions, right? How could somebody be 22 and 42 at the same time? How does it make sense to take this as verbatim? And I told myself, I wanted to start with the Bible because, I mean, it was the closest thing around me. I mean, I could easily talk to other Christians around me. I knew a lot. So I was like, okay, well, if I do this, it'd be a lot easier. Nope, wasn't that easy. And I found atheists to also bring like really good arguments. I watch a lot of like actual debates, so people talking about problem of evil, why God should and shouldn't exist, stuff like that with like actual debates. So now it's January 1st, 2024, and I started the Quran. And I decided to finish the whole thing in about a month. So January 1st to January 31st. But unfortunately I didn't finish it, and now that I'm looking back on it, it's actually quite interesting because, how they do it where you recite 1/30th of the Quran for an entire month. That's literally like how Ramadan, how they do it with Tarawih. So it's pretty cool. I was able to kind of do that on my own without even realizing it, right? And just 2 months later was Ramadan. And I bought a pretty hard to understand translation, so it was honestly like really hard for me to read, but I could still see everything that people were talking about.
So, I'm not familiar with Quran translation because the Quran that we have, that normally Muslim that is raised as Muslim, we have the Quran and then we have the translation there. But seeing some image of the full English translation, it becomes like a book, right? When I say that, because when you read the Quran as we have as Muslim, it's like the Arabic text, and then this is the meaning of this verse. This is the meaning of this verse, right? So it's more of, I'm not sure how to make clear the distinction. But when you read as a book, it's just like a paragraph, right? Yeah, that's number one. Number two, I think there's different approach of translating the Quran in the sense that, are you going to be word by word, which not every phrase, if you translate word by word, it becomes something that you can understand, because different language have different way of combining words to make sense of things, be it including the linguistic tools like metaphor, analogy, etc. So if you translate word by word, then what does that mean, right? So that's one thing. So that's why some translate it's not a literal translation, it's a contextual translation, quote unquote, or have an element of tafsir inside that, so it translate the meaning conveyed, not the literal word by word, right? So I'm not sure which one he read, which is hard to understand. Perhaps the word by word, I would assume.
How it's not a book about cutting people's heads off and beating your wives. No, it's not. It's about actually loving people and fulfilling your purpose. Something that you.
Now that's a thing, but there are many Christians that when they I'm not sure. I assume sometimes they want to debate, or they are sincere, having curious problem or question about Islam, about those kind of things, right? Didn't Quran say this? But when they plug in a verse and saying that, right? So honestly speaking, it's very hard for anyone, just like he said, right? If you read cover to cover as a narrative, as a story, as a, things that is presented to you, for you to suddenly conclude or see certain whatever the normally the Christian pick out, because it is part of a long story, and then suddenly, I don't know, maybe for some people that verse jumps out and they forget everything else, but for normal reader, you do not become fixated on something that when you take out of context it becomes something that you can present as something problematic. So I think that's a very different way of reading, because if you are reading trying to find some verse that you can use as your argument, obviously you will find that, but if you read to let the story told you the full story to yourself, it's very hard to actually become those kind of people, I would think.
You don't really see a lot with modern day Christians or even atheists, right? Even before finishing the Quran on February 5th, when I was 18, I took my Shahada in my room. I mean, I was doing calculus homework and I did it. I was just kind of thinking to myself, like, dude, I know this is the truth. Why am I doing it? Just thinking in my head. And I was just like, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluh. I definitely felt better. I'm not going to say my life.
That is interesting, meaning that on your own you can already say something like that. Of course not on your, meaning that I'm not saying he do not have any outside influence at all, because he watches videos, debate, etc., right? So for sure he gets certain idea from various of the sources, but I'm saying that it's not a direct engagement from any Muslim, right?
Turned around, as soon as that happened, no, there's still a ton of work to be done. Inshallah. I wrote this a few nights ago because, I don't know, I was just thinking in my head, man, my story isn't very boring. So might as well just tell people about it. And I can just simply refer them to this video so I don't have to explain it every time.
Yeah, Alhamdulillah. So may Allah give him continuous hidayah, istiqamah, and strength to become better and better Muslim. And hopefully, because nowadays people like this, in the sense that they themselves have going to the phase of reverting, they can become a great agent of change compared to many born Muslim, quote unquote, because it's more relatable for many of those from those area, from those background, and we have seen many of the revert actively affecting people, especially those who are in social media, where we can observe. I'm not saying those who are not visible in social media is not doing anything. I'm sure many of them actually do anything, but because we cannot see, I cannot see it, I cannot comment on that, right? But for those who are actually visible, they can actually become a source of hidayah, an asbab of hidayah, inshallah. So hopefully I make dua for this guy and others that go through the same journey. With that, thank you for watching. See you next time.